if you've watched my channel or live streams for even just a little bit, you already know that I am a huge fan of the Nintendo Gamecube. It's my favorite game system of all time, and sure, there is definitely some childhood bias there, but even still, all these years later, the Nintendo Gamecube still has some of my favorite games of all time on it. With 2026 being the console's 25th anniversary, I thought it'd be appropriate to review some Gamecube games. It'll be nice to review something I'm actually familiar with for a change, and of course. Well, an atmosphere like this does make for the perfect mood to play Luigi's Mansion, so why don't we start there? Wait, how is the GameCube working if the power is... You know what? I don't care. Let's just play. So it wasn't my intention to jump back into the Mario series so soon after giving it a lot of attention on the channel last year, but with a marathon of GameCube games on the table, starting with the system's primo launch title just made too much sense. Luigi's Mansion was originally unveiled at Nintendo Space World 2000. At the time, it was just a tech demo to show the graphical capabilities of the purple lunchbox, and eventually was made into its own game. And yeah, the tech demos shown off for the GameCube at the time were mad impressive, I imagine. I mean, considering that games at the time looked like this, and the GameCube was rendering this? Yeah, pretty cool. Now, as you might imagine, this tech demo of the game bears a little resemblance to the final game, as these things rarely did back in the day. As impressive as the game looks graphically, though, what a weird way to kick off your new system, right? I mean, Mario hadn't had a mainline game since Super Mario 64 launched in 1996. So 5 years later, and you launch your new console with a game starring Luigi, and it's more of a puzzle-adventure game instead of a platformer? People were puzzled, to say the least. Now, Luigi's Mansion would go on to be received rather well critically, but some people were let down. Not that it mattered to me when I first got my GameCube on Christmas of 2002. I mean, I was 5, I didn't know anything about the greater industry at the time. All I knew was that I recognized the funny green plumber on the box from Mario Kart Super Circuit, and that alone had me pretty excited to play. Yeah, I went from the Mario Kart game with fucking Cheese Land to Ghost Adventures at Luigi's house, okay? We are not the same. Well, shall we? Like I said before, Luigi's Mansion isn't your typical Mario platformer and is more of a puzzle-adventure game. So no jumping on top of mushrooms or anything like that. No, this go-around, Luigi has apparently won a mansion from a contest that he never entered. As it turns out, the mansion is haunted and crawling with ghosts who end up capturing Mario. You know, he really should have seen that coming. I mean, the mansion doesn't look too dissimilar from ghost houses in Super Mario World or Big Boo's haunt in Super Mario 64. This isn't exactly Mario's first time in a haunted mansion. Well, lucky for him, Luigi ends up traveling to the mansion later to investigate and find his brother. With assistance from Professor Egad, Luigi is equipped with the Poltergust 3000 to capture the spirits haunting the mansion. And that's pretty much it. 5 minutes into the game and that's all the story you're gonna get. I mean, it's a Mario game, that's par for the course, honestly. There's a little foreshadowing here and there, but the plot is ultimately as straightforward as Mario's been kidnapped, and it's up to Luigi to save him. Well, right off the bat, I gotta say, Luigi's Mansion nails that opening moment of the game. Luigi stepping into the foyer of the mansion with all the lights off, obviously terrified out of his mind. Like, Luigi has no idea what he's getting into here, much like you, the player. Going up the stairs, checking the locked door, hearing that sudden spooky laughter, then getting haunted by Cheeto dust and meeting Egad. Just a great sequence overall. Puts the game's art style front and center and sets the tone immaculately well. Yeah, I'm sure it goes without saying at this point, but Luigi's Mansion is made for a much younger demographic, right? Like, this game isn't trying to make you shit your pants like Silent Hill or Fatal Frame, but it is appropriately spooky, and if you happen to look too deep into things like I do sometimes, does have a few bone-chilling moments, like, yep, that sure is a dead ghost, baby. Sorry, let me get back on track here. After the opening sequence, the gameplay loop breaks down like this. Luigi enters the mansion, and it's up to you to explore what areas are available to you, capturing ghosts along the way. Each room will have a few ghosts for you to capture, and once you catch all of them, the lights turn back on and you're rewarded with a chest, which normally contains a key to the next room you'll need to clear out. It's not just the small fry you have to worry about, though. It won't take long for you to come across what the game calls portrait ghosts. Portrait ghosts are what you'll be trying to capture most of the time, as catching all the portrait ghosts in a given area will unlock the room to one of the main boss battles. Apparently these are ghosts that Egad had once captured himself, but they ended up escaping into the mansion once it appeared. And I just gotta ask, why did Egad capture these ghosts? I mean, most of them don't even attack Luigi. They escaped their portraits, went back into the mansion, and went back to doing what I assume they were doing while they were still alive. Most don't even acknowledge that Luigi is in the room with them. Like, these two are dancing, Harold's just trying to read a book, man, and Biff Atlas here is too preoccupied with his gains to even bother anyone. Alright, man, that's just weird. Okay, enough of that. What was I saying? Right, portrait ghosts. Each portrait ghost has 100 HP, but will need to have their hearts revealed before you're able to start giving them the good suck! Unlike the regular ghost, you can't just flash light in their face and go to town. Some are as easy as just waiting around, others will require you to stun them somehow, or survive a few attacks before they get tired, or... Okay, I don't really know what to do with these two. What's with the damn Cheeto dust? Well, when their heart is eventually revealed, that's your time to strike with the Poltergust 3000. So, let's talk about this. Wrangling up ghosts with the Poltergust is a bit weird, so I'll try my best to explain it. This is where you find out that Luigi's Mansion is actually secretly a fishing game. Okay, I know that sounds silly, but I'm serious here. When you start pulling in a ghost with the Poltergust, they'll try to get away. To keep them from escaping, all you have to do is hold the control stick in the opposite direction that they're trying to escape to. Holding the wrong direction for too long will allow the ghost to escape and require you to reveal their heart again. Properly wielding the Poltergust may take some getting used to, but once you've got the hang of things, wrangling up ghosts becomes incredibly fun and pretty damn satisfying. Especially when you manage to pull in a portrait ghost all in one fell swoop. That is a damn good feeling. Alas, if you can't quite keep the ghost ensnared, this can cause the encounters to drag out and take a while as you have to wait for them to be vulnerable again. That's pretty much the gist of the gameplay loop though. Go to a room, capture the ghosts, get the key to the next room, lather, rinse, repeat until you get to the boss of that area, and then do it all over again. Now I know that may seem repetitive to some, and I suppose objectively speaking it is, but I can deal with a repetitious gameplay loop as long as the gameplay in question is this much fun. And Luigi's Mansion does throw a few curveballs at you to shake things up every now and then. One of those curveballs you'll find fairly early on are the original ghosts of the Mario series, the Boos, now led by their very own King Boo. When Luigi reaches the storage room in Area 2, he discovers this mysterious hatch on the floor hidden behind a secret wall, and when he opens it, out pop the Boos. Now, jumping ahead a bit here, King Boo is the one who managed to capture Mario when he came by the mansion. With that said, let me get this off my chest. I have several questions. EGAD tells us that the Boos were trapped in that room until Luigi released them. So if that's the case, then how did King Boo capture Mario in the first place? No, seriously, there's not exactly a ton of time between Mario getting captured and Luigi showing up at the mansion later. So how did you end up capturing yourself and your entire army, you fucking idiot? Secondly, Boos are capable of phasing through walls, ceilings, and floors, so I don't think a grate on the floor is enough to keep them captured. Like, I get that the game needed some way to introduce them as a major element, but this just doesn't make any sense at all. And look, I understand that it's easy to just wave this off and say, oh, it's just a Mario game, it doesn't matter. And like, yeah, I get that, but if you're gonna bother having even the simplest and most straightforward narrative, at the absolute bare minimum, you've got to keep the events of the plot consistent. Ultimately, this little misstep in the plot doesn't really matter in the long run, nor does it detract from my enjoyment of the game at all. It's just so damn distracting, and it's been stuck in my head ever since I replayed the game for this video. While the Boos narrative introduction doesn't really make much sense, they are a pretty important part of the game. Once the Boos are released, they'll begin to appear in rooms that have been lit up. Once the lights are on, you'll have to use your Boo radar in the lower right-hand corner of the screen to find them and then proceed to pull them in with the Poltergust 3000. Unlike regular ghosts, the Boos can move freely as you attempt to pull them in, even going so far as to phase into another room. The encounters with the Boos are easily the most annoying part of the game. They generally have more HP than standard ghosts, and by endgame, some go as high as 300 HP, good lord. If you've got real shit luck, then you may end up chasing a Boo across multiple rooms, or, even worse, the little shit can phase into a locked room that you can't access, effectively putting that encounter on hold until you can progress further in the game, or save and reset. And you can't skip them either! Capturing a certain number of Boos is required to enter certain areas of the game, including the final boss, so like it or not, you have to capture the Boos. There are a total of 50 Boos, but you only need 40 to make it to the final boss. So I have two recommendations for you to make this part of the game as easy as possible. 1. Capture every Boo you can as soon as they are available to be captured. If you capture every Boo possible, by the time you reach the final stretch of the game, you'll be at 39 Boos. Just capture one more and you're set to beat the game and ignore the rest of the Boos at that point. The second tip I recommend for you is to learn a technique called R-pumping. This is a technique that speedrunners use to keep a boo locked in place, preventing them from escaping into another room and wasting time. And it's pretty simple to do. Once you've started draining a boo's health, hold down the L button and then rhythmatically press and release the R button. If done correctly, this will keep a boo locked in place to capture it more easily. This can save you a lot of time and frustration if you choose to learn it. That said, boos are unfortunately programmed to move to another room after enough of their HP is drained, so it's not a guaranteed lock, but that really only matters for boos with really high HP values. It's not at all necessary to beat the game or have a good time with it, but it does make what I find to be the most annoying part of the game much more bearable. And I think the developers knew that capturing boos was a pretty arduous task, as towards the end of the game, you have this boss fight against Boolossus, essentially 15 boos all formed into one large ghost. Defeating this boss just straight up gives you 15 boos. That's right, nearly half of your endgame quota is just given to you from this one boss fight. If you ask me, that's a bit of a self-report, but I'll just leave it at that. Of course, catching ghosts isn't all you'll be doing, as in some rooms you may be required to solve a puzzle first to get the ghost to appear. The puzzles aren't too complicated. It's usually something like using the vacuum to extinguish candles, interacting with specific pieces of furniture, utilizing an elemental power-up like fire, water, or ice to activate something in the room, or scanning something with the Game Boy Horror. Oh right, I haven't mentioned the Game Boy Horror yet, have I? Pressing the X button will bring up the Game Boy Horror scanner. This puts you in a first-person perspective, allowing you to see more of the room than you normally would at the game's fixed camera angle. This is a surprisingly useful feature. You can scan certain objects or enemies to get hints on how to solve puzzles, use the first-person perspective to find hidden secrets, scan mirrors to instantly fast travel to the mansion's foyer, or, my personal favorite use case, scan random bullshit to get Luigi's opinion on the object. Yeah, for whatever reason, Luigi has something to say about most objects in the mansion, and it's honestly pretty funny stuff to read sometimes. Honestly, this small decision to have Luigi comment on various things gives the game and Luigi himself a lot of personality. Like, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Luigi is probably one of, if not the most developed character in the entire Mario series, and all of that really started with this game. He's a cowardly yet lovable goofball that just wants to make sure his brother is okay, and that makes him pretty relatable. They even communicate this character trait of Luigi in gameplay. It is an incredibly minor and innocuous thing, but when you press the A button, Luigi does this.
Mario!
He calls for his brother. Let me gush about this for a second. When Miyamoto was designing the Gamecube controller, he specifically made the A button much larger so that players could instantly recognize which button on the controller was the most important. With that philosophy in mind, developers would often tie the most important actions you do in a game to the A button. Things like confirming menu options, jumping in Mario, shooting in Metroid. So with that in mind, what did the developers find so important to map to the controller's most essential button?
Mario!
I mean, we are looking for Mario after all, and look, I understand that the game is primarily played with the 2 triggers and the 2 analog sticks, and that the developers probably thought it would just be weird to have such a large button do nothing at all, but despite that, I feel like there's a lot of intentionality behind this decision, and I absolutely adore that. Speaking of Mario, why don't we get a move on and finally save the big guy, huh? When you finally reach King Boo's altar under the mansion, you find him with Mario trapped inside a painting. King Boo reveals that Bowser is also involved and pulls Luigi into the painting for the final battle. Come on now. Did you really expect a Mario game to not have Bowser randomly show up at the end? Okay, I guess this isn't technically Bowser. Actually, what am I looking at? Is this supposed to be a robot Bowser piloted by King Boo? I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. To be fair, there is a fortune teller ghost, Madame Clairvoya, that foreshadows Bowser's appearance earlier in the game, so it's not a complete ass pull like it was in Yoshi's New Island, but I still find it kinda lame to be honest. Like, I don't think this game really needed Bowser, yet here he is anyway. Gotta say though, he's looking much better here than he was on the Nintendo 64 at least. Well, after giving King Boo a good suck, you pull him into the Poltergust 3000 and successfully save Mario. Luigi scurries back to Egad's lab, and we get what is probably my favorite cutscene in all of Super Mario.
Mamma mia. Oh, oh, oh,
I just can't get enough of this cutscene. Watching Mario get zapped, crushed, and practically mangled is pretty comedic, but when it's all said and done, seeing Luigi cry tears of joy that his brother is safe, that just tugs at my heartstrings, man. You're also ranked at the end of the game based on how much money you managed to collect. Yeah, I'm sure you noticed the insane wads of cash the game just showers you in at this point. Coins, dollar bills, gold bars, pearls, gemstones. Jesus Christ, it's a wonder the A rank isn't just Wario's castle. I mean, my god. EGAD uses the money you've collected throughout the game to build Luigi his own mansion, with it taking on different appearances depending on how much money you earned, with A rank being the highest and H rank being the lowest. Recording my playthrough for this review was actually the first time I ever received the A rank, actually, so that was a nice surprise. If you're looking to specifically achieve the A rank, then you're pretty much required to capture all the optional portrait ghosts, all the boos, and find a good number of secrets throughout the game, as doing that will net you a ton of really valuable gemstones that'll quickly skyrocket your earnings. In fact, even outside of earning a high rank at the end of the game, I think I'd recommend doing all that stuff anyway, just because this game is pretty short. I 100% this game for the review, and I clocked in at roughly 4 to 5 hours. Now granted, I've beaten this game several times at this point, and I know it like the back of my hand, so first playthroughs may have a longer runtime, but even still, it doesn't take much time to seek out these optional encounters, so consider looking for them if you want to maximize your runtime with the game. I guess before we wrap up here, I should quickly cover the game's presentation. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but man, this is a good-looking game. It's almost hard to believe that this game came out in 2001. Sure, graphics have come a long way since this game, but it's aged remarkably well and stands out as one of the best looking games on the Gamecube, which is kind of an insane thing to say for a launch title. I don't really have much to say on the soundtrack. It's good stuff and fits the game's setting very well, but it isn't as catchy as music from the rest of the Mario series. I do, however, get a kick out of Luigi humming and whistling the main theme when walking around the mansion, though. That's a really nice and creative detail. Oh, good. What else can I say, though? I'm sure it's painfully obvious at this point that I absolutely adore this game. I've spent the entire video just gushing about what I love about it. Don't misunderstand, this is not a perfect game by any means. In fact, if I had to knock this game for anything, I'd say it's got a massive backtracking problem. This game will have you backtrack on multiple occasions, especially in the final area. Going back and forth from the attic to the basement constantly just takes forever. Luigi isn't exactly Speedy Gonzales here. But that's really the only major complaint I have with the game. Anything else I can think of just seems so incredibly minor that it's really not even worth bringing up. Luigi's Mansion is an unapologetically weird and creative game that's definitely still worth playing 25 years later. And if you're interested in playing the game, well, lucky you, Nintendo has finally started re-releasing Gamecube games on their NSO expansion pack service, so if you have a Switch 2, this is probably the best way to play the game these days. The game was also re-released on the Nintendo 3DS in 2018, but I haven't played that version, and from what I've heard through the grapevine, it's not exactly the best remake out there, so probably best to just stick with the Gamecube version. Well, that was fun. It's always nice to go back to a game you grew up with and still find that it still holds up and... Do you hear something? Oh, shit.